Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health? Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I'm very excited to have with me Dawyn Cloud-Alter. She is a complementary alternative specialist who focuses on healing the whole person. She incorporates CBT, EFT, herbalism, and CBTI modalities based on the individual's need, always connecting the healing of the body and the mind, including the use of herbs and specific supplements and recommendations. She has a BS in Human Services, a master's in Marriage and Family Therapy, and is a certified EFT practitioner, certified family herbalist, and certified cognitive behavioral therapist for insomnia. Dawyn was an adjunct at Western Connecticut State University teaching classes on herbalism, and she is an avid gardener. Welcome, Dawyn.
Oh, hi, hello. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
It's really an honor.
Thank you. Thank you. Dawyn and I actually met through a project I want to talk about a little bit later.
Okay.
But first, I always like to start the show with asking my guests to let us know a little bit about yourself and how it is that you came to be doing the work that you're doing.
Okay. Well, I've been around the block a while. I have 3 grown children and a beautiful 2-year-old granddaughter. So I was raised in a household with parents who love to garden. And my mother was also a writer, but she could also tell you the botanical name of everything around her that was growing or that she planted. And so that was instilled in me at a very, very, very young age. So I grew up with a love of nature, a love of plants, of digging in the soil and that whole aspect of it. As I got older, I became interested in the human body and medicine. Thought I was going to go into medicine, and then ended up switching based on an experience I had in terms of learning meditation, in terms of going to the other side, in terms of really making the decision to work with people and helping them heal on an emotional, psychological, and spiritual level. Because for me, healing incorporates all of those things. So that's where I began. I had a mother who used to say, if you can't easily pronounce what's on the label, don't ingest it and don't put it on your skin.
Good advice.
So she once shared a story with me when I was older about an aunt who was all excited when aluminum foil came out. And my mother's response was, I don't know what you're excited about, it's metal. And you're heating it and you're cooking with it. So that's the beginning. And so, I went to school and I went to graduate school, and then still always loved to garden. And then I had a child who's now 36 years old. And I said, well, Dawyn, cuts, scrapes, bruises. There has to be other alternatives for that, once he became a toddler. So I started to do research, and basically for the most part, almost pretty much, back in the day when you did research, you had to go to the library. And then I found other individuals who were using herbalism and using it traditionally. I worked with a few Native American healers who used herbs. Studied, took classes and all of that, Rosemary Gladstar, and the list goes on and on and on. So I went in my kitchen and started making things. And then other people said, well, wow, this is really cool. can I have some? And I said, sure. And it was like, well, wow, this really worked. So, I'm really grateful to my upbringing and grateful to my parents, um, exposing me to the love of nature and instilling in me that there's a connection, that we're connected to all of it, that we're not separate, that our bodies are not, our physical bodies are not separate from our minds, are not separate from our spirits, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's how I started, and I just kept doing my thing. And here I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about how plants, herbs, and how is that medicine, right? Like
Yep.
traditionally we hear about plant medicine, we hear about some interesting new things that are happening with old plant medicines. I mean, what does that even mean, and how are people using plants as medicine?
Well, 75 to 80% of the globe today uses plants, um, as medicinal medicine to this day, um, in terms of what's going on in the globe. So people, surprisingly enough, aside from getting educated, aside from becoming ill, having illnesses and experiences, or loved ones having those experiences, and seeking allopathic, which is the normal medical Western way of healing, and found that in many cases for them, it wasn't working. And so they began to seek out other methods, either based on things that they heard or talking to someone in a natural health food store. Supplements and that whole process today is $1 billion business. And a lot of people will still go see their regular physicians today and don't necessarily inform them of all of the things that they're taking or using, based on probably some fear and some apprehension as to how their regular GP or internist will react to them. So, that's that process. And we also know that the pharmaceutical industry, when they're able, the pharmaceutical industry, let me explain it this way, when they're able to isolate a specific molecule from a plant, because they can't isolate everything, but a specific molecule, then they turn that into a drug. An example of that is something called digitalis, which is actually used as a heart medication, but it comes from the foxglove plant. Europeans had herbal knowledge before coming to the Americas, and Native American people, indigenous people, that was a way of life for them. So that introduction was really, really important, because when the Europeans arrived, there were many things that they weren't accustomed to or used to. And, I don't want to use the term work together, but learned an awful lot from the indigenous people that were here in terms of, what they use, from everything from a toothache to assisting a woman in childbirth. And so that began to grow. More people came over. Then you had, midwives and physicians and that whole thing. So, and this exists all over the globe, everywhere. I was just reading an article today on herbs that are used in Nigeria. So, like that's the process. And I think where Americans are, to a degree, many of them, is that they're sick and tired of the use of pharmaceuticals that can be harmful to them. And I really think that's it. One of the things I always try to talk about with people, especially young people, is the dandelion. So you're in a city and you're walking around and you're looking down in the crack of cement, and here comes a dandelion. People are using Roundup on their lawns, which also enter the water supply, but that's another issue. And they return. Well, we know that the dandelion leaf itself is one of the best natural diuretics known to man and extremely important because it doesn't rob the body of electrolytes. The root is excellent for the liver. And so, people eat dandelion greens or drink dandelion wine. So as we evolve and as we become more aware, and I think as human beings, we're becoming more aware consciously of a connection, our connection to everything else around us. I happen to be sitting on a screen porch right now. So I'm looking outside and all I see is all these beautiful trees. That they're just not there for the sake of being there, that there's a connection there, and that they have the potential to really assist us and help us heal. My father used to always say to me, I would look down on the ground and I would say, well, what weed is that? And he would say, it's not a weed. We just don't know what it is yet or what it does. It's here on purpose. Mm-hmm. So I think that's great. I think it's exciting. You're in California. Naturopaths there are like kicking it. They're able to have been for many, 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 many years. California has always been very open to, things like aromatherapy, seeking a naturopath. Naturopaths have had, and probably still do, I'm not sure, hospital privileges. I'm here in the Northeast. That does not happen, or at least it hasn't happened yet. So people are seeking and getting answers to things that can really assist them. But herbs, like everything else, it's nothing is a one size fits all. So when you're sitting down with a person, you want to know about their constitution, you want to know about their diet, you really want to be specific about any medication they're taking or have taken, because they can also be nurturing and tonic and tone the body, but they can also be powerful and poisonous. So that's why one of the things I always tell people is, do your research, seek advice, and ask questions, mm-hmm. So that you can empower yourself.
So when you work with folks who maybe have, let's say, a mental health type diagnosis or symptoms like depression or anxiety, it's what we most commonly see nowadays. We're seeing a lot of people with trauma and PTSD. How can herbs be something that assists someone who might be dealing with some of those issues?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say is when someone makes an appointment, before they even get in the door, I send them an 8-page form to fill out because I want to know about their psychological health, their family history, their health, any medication, any trauma, all of it. And I go through all the organs and systems of the body, and then I meet the person in person. And because I've been doing this for so long, I have a sense by looking at a person of where they may be coming from and what the issue is. You know what I mean? I may ask to look at their tongue. Are they pale? Are they cold? Are they hot? Are they dry? What are their number one complaints? But with depression and anxiety, basically, for the most part, if you're really struggling with anxiety, you're going to have depression. I find that the two often go hand in hand. So, and find out what type of medication they're on. And it depends on their level of depression. If it's mild depression, sometimes I'll say, you know what, I think we should give St. John's Wort a try. Again, knowing what type of medication they're on, so that we don't make any errors. And for some people who are suffering with mild depression, that can be very, 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 very helpful. I encourage everyone to use adaptogens, regardless of their mental health issue. And adaptogens are basically herbs that are used to bring us to a homeostasis state, a state of balance. So I really love ashwagandha. because I take it. I recommend that people take it. I normally don't encourage people to, for the most part, to use things that I haven't used myself personally or recommended to other people. Tulsi, which is also known as holy basil, has the just of making a tea out of it, just kind of just chills you out, slows down the mind, reduces anxiety. There's nervines, there's skull cap, which is very, very good. I often recommend that also with women who are suffering from anxiety with PMS symptoms, because it has the ability just to really, really regulate the nervous system. Goji berry is very, very good for a clear mind. I'll talk a little bit more about kava. Let's see. Lavender is another good one. There's this little capsule called Calm Aid, and I forget the company that puts it out. I think it's Nature's Way. But believe it or not, it's this little tiny brown capsule, and there's a little bit of lavender inside. And a lot of people say, Dawn, wow, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that it stopped my racing heart. I was a little bit calmer. I was a little less stressed. And so, you know, that's also beneficial and extremely, extremely helpful for people. Ginseng, depending on the symptoms that the person is having in terms of brain fog, you know, gotu kola is another one that's very beneficial. So there's a number of different herbs based on the person, the constitution, what I see and what I sense in front of me, and what they've tried that has been beneficial, and things that have worked and what has not worked for them. So let's see, am I missing something? Oh, saffron is huge. The spice. It boosts the neurotransmitter serotonin in the brain. Now, saffron is one of the most expensive spices in the world. You can actually grow it. And it's not that difficult to grow. So that's pretty exciting. What else do we have here? Oh, rhodiola. Also very, very good, very beneficial for people. So with depression, PTSD, and as far as trauma, you know, there's lowercase trauma, lower T and capital T. We all have trauma. And we're dealing with COVID. We're dealing with the world just being where it is right now. We're dealing with issues with the nation just being the way it is. You know, all of us are under a tremendous amount of stress. And so, you know, sometimes it's just saying to a person, you know what, I want you to get some chamomile tea, organic chamomile tea, and some Tulsi, and either have it at the beginning of the day or the middle of the day, just to calm you down a little bit. Now, if it's really intense, then I get into other things. I'm a big proponent of CBD, huge.
Tell us more about that. Yeah.
Well, what most people don't realize is the endocannabinoid system exists within us already. It exists in most vertebrae and even plants, except insects. So, you know as well as I do all the studies that have been done as far as the hippocampus and all of that stuff. So what we know is functioning MRIs show us that CBD activates the region of the brain of the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. And what we also know is that oftentimes people who are suffering with intensive PTSD or anxiety have fewer what they call CB1 receptors. And so the CBD boosts that, and it increases their level of serotonin at the same time, you know, really making a difference with that hippocampus. And in some cases, they've noticed that the hippocampus itself, with many individuals who have suffered from PTSD and intense trauma, anxiety, that their hippocampus tends to be smaller. And what they tend to notice is after using CBD for a period of time, it actually gets larger.
Wow.
So that's pretty, pretty exciting. It's an herb. Cannabis is not new. Right now, they're saying it's been on the planet about 6,000 years. For 5,000 years, it's been used in India medicinally, in India, Egypt, and Asia. So it affects our endocannabinoid system. It affects our entire body, our immune system, our sense of well-being, the reduction in inflammation. You hurt yourself, right? So you're playing tennis, you hurt yourself. You hurt your knee, it starts to swell. You lay off it, you take it easy, you put ice on it, and that inflammation begins to reduce. That's based on your endocannabinoid system. So nervous system, it even plays a role in your uteral development. So I think it's groovy because it's a plant, it's my own bias, but what exists in the plant also exists in us. I think the reason why so many people now are struggling with their CB1 receptors not working as properly has to do with a host of things. The environment, the water we drink, the food we eat. You know, our bodies can make vitamins, some vitamins on its own. It can't make minerals. The only way for us to really get minerals is from the soil. Well, the soil is depleted. In 1935, the US Department of Agriculture actually put out a pamphlet that talked about the amount of minerals decreasing. So, and there's been a whole host of studies on a whole host of things, including umbilical cord blood, that was done by the Red Cross more than once, where this blood was tested and they found residue or elements of chemicals that have been banned for 40 or 50 years. Yeah. So I believe we're micronutrient starved. And I also sometimes wonder if that blood-brain barrier, based on all of that, the pollution, the environment, the stress, all of it, everything together, has affected that blood-brain barrier. I don't know, but that's what my gut is telling me, that things are crossing. I mean, look at all the things that we have. We have chronic fatigue, we have fibromyalgia, we have lupus it's just, anxiety is intense and rampant. And so I know anxiety well from my own personal experience, because as a younger woman, I was actually agoraphobic. And your audience may not know, but that means I couldn't leave my house. And so, but at that time it was a green bean. They didn't know what they know now. They didn't whatever. So, there's a whole host of things. And in reference to that, when I first got diagnosed with Lyme, I was bitten by one of those brown recluse spiders. And I was meditating. So I was on the floor, got bitten by one of those spiders. I was like, oh, wow, okay, complete tissue damage behind my left knee, turned completely black. 24 hours went by, and I couldn't get out of bed. And my husband worked to travel to work was 110 miles. So he left that morning. I called my sister who lived that same distance, and she came just to drive me 2 miles up the road to the doctor because I couldn't do it. Wow. And anyway, she did the test, whatever. And when the results came back, she just said, Dawn, this has been in you for a long time. And so, having knowledge and understanding of things, we also know that Lyme and Lyme co-infections can also cause a host of psychological and emotional and even psychosis that is still in many ways just a green bean. And I'm in Connecticut, all right?
Yes.
The place of lime.
Yes.
So I've had it 8 times because I'm always out dirt digging. And then eventually what I said is, I said, you know what? They're coming to spray cedar on my all over. They're coming to spray it because I can't not dig in the dirt. COVID, there's just so many things going on. And I'm seeing a lot of people who, COVID just really put them in a high state of anxiety and fear. And for some people, for many people, it was caused a lot of trauma because, they've known people or have family members who didn't survive it. So I always recommend with working with people, number one, we're going to try one thing at a time. If your depression is mild, we may start with some St. John's wort, feel it out. I like extracts and tinctures. See if you notice a difference. I also recommend supplements because they're extremely, extremely important. Most of us who have suffered with intense trauma or anxiety especially can oftentimes be low in vitamin D, but really depleted of magnesium. And magnesium is everything. And the one thing most people don't understand is you go have your physical. Prior to that, you go to the lab and they take your blood, right? So you finally come in to see the physician and the physician says, well, no, everything is fine. Your levels are fine. Your magnesium levels are fine. It's not the magnesium in your blood. It's the magnesium in your cells. Your regular GP or internist doesn't test for that. And so if someone is saying, Dawn, I'm having difficulty sleeping and I'm really, really anxious, I often recommend that they take magnesium glycinate. And as an herbalist, what I do in that case is I bring them up to a therapeutic dose level. Vitamin B12, B complex, extremely, extremely important. Vitamin D is another one. So these are basic standard supplements that I often recommend that people take because we're just depleted. Especially when you live in the Northeast, seasonal affective disorder is very real here. Come winter, like right now, like all of us are like, woo, yeah, summertime and the sun is shining. It gets dark early. They set the clocks back. Things like COVID on top of it, it just is really hard and really difficult. So if I was to make a recommendation today, period, in general, one of the first things I would recommend that people start taking is ashwagandha.
Yeah.
And tulsi, which is holy basil. And making it as a tea is really, really fantastic. And if others are really suffering from intense anxiety, PTSD, I don't know, there's been some studies even with schizophrenia and CBD. And autism, depression, of course, anxiety. I really encourage people to either seek out a consultation with someone. And well, you're in California, so you guys probably have dispensaries all over the place. But for depression, what has happened with a lot of people who are on some intense medication for depression, when they start using CBD and start using it regularly, many of them are able to cut their medication, their antidepressant medication, in half.
Wow.
So, I just think that's fantastic, and that's that's wonderful, and it really benefits a lot of people. The CBD is cannabis. Cannabis and marijuana cannabis I'm saying that for the sake of the audience. They're the same plant, except CBD is it's not psychoactive. It only has basically between 0.03% of THC, and that's why it's legal.
Right. It does not get you high, just taking CBD.
Yeah, there you go. It doesn't get you high. So, and you can take it in a variety of ways. You can take it as a tincture. You can take it as a gummy. Gummies take longer because they have to go through your digestive tract. Yeah, you know, people use them as salves, they use them as oil or whatever. So, you know, I highly recommend that people look into that. If anxiety is an issue for you, however, you have to stay away from high strains of THC because that can induce paranoia and make you more anxious. So when people say, Dawn, I'm suffering from PTSD, I'm suffering from anxiety disorder, I always recommend, in terms of going to a dispensary, if that's what they do, or growing their own or whatever, that they use a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's 1 part hemp, CBD, and 1 part THC. And again, depending on what else is going on with a person, you know, if they're receiving allopathic treatment for cancer, you know, then that's a total different dose. That's a total different ball of wax. Chronic pain, total another different ball of wax, you know, and some people are just more sensitive to THC in general. But it's beneficial and so many people are using it. So many people are using it and not informing their physicians that they're using it.
Right.
Because they're afraid of you know, the reaction, I guess, or backlash, or if they're fortunate enough to have a cool enough physician to say, hey, you know what, here's your card, you know, this is what you're dealing with. And so I love herbalism. I love the earth. I love working with people. I love working with people doing EFT because that affects the neurological system. So when somebody comes and says, Dawn, I'm depressed, or I think I'm depressed, you know, I ask them all the standard questions, you know, how's your sleep, how's your libido, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we go down the list. But I also want to know how what their diet is like, what they're eating, what they're drinking, all of those things. So because they all work together and work in unison with each other.
Right.
You know, if somebody says, oh, I drink 3 cans of Red Bull, I go, oh, no wonder you can't sleep. And there are other herbs like valerian root, very potent, very powerful for the nervous system, will totally chill you out. I recommend that people take that at night. I talked about skullcap. California poppy is also very good. It's not the addictive opium type of poppy, but oats is also very good and very beneficial. So, you know, I work with people so that we can figure out what will work for them, and what really makes a difference. And B12 for many people really makes a difference. A number of clients I've said, here you go. They come back a week later and said, Dawn, you know, I felt different in 45 minutes. Or, you know, I'm sleeping better. So that plays a role in it too. But I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really the gift. It's not just, you know, what I find, it's like with food, it's the same thing. When you prepare food for someone, your energy, your love, your caring, that gets transmitted into the dish. And I think the same way with plants, you know, like the source is really important. Where are you getting your herbs from, and like whose hands are they passing through, and all of that? I think that's a big part of this.
That's a huge part of it. But in reference to kava, which I think is very awesome, there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, kava and your liver, and there was that about comfrey and all of that. But knowing where your herbs are sourced. Number one, I only recommend that people take or get access to things that are organic, but with kava, which has really been beneficial for many people for anxiety. It's where your things are sourced, because you can buy kava but not know where the roots are grown necessarily. You know, all kava is not the same. All chamomile is not the same. All St. John's wort is not the same. So that's extremely important, that, you know, people just take the time and do the research or contact somebody who, you know, has an idea or could make a reference. But kava, I've seen it work wonders for many, many people. And if people are on it and on it for a period of time, I also recommend that they have their liver enzymes checked, which is really quick, really easy. And, you know, I haven't had anybody come back and say, oh God, Dawn, my liver, because I asked to see that stuff, you know, that they've had any problem with their liver enzymes. So, you know, that's been used for thousands of years. On the Pacific Islands, people use it initially for ceremonial purposes. And, you know, it can really make a difference. But another thing I want to say, because I think it's very important, is that we live in a culture in America and in the Western part of the world where we want a quick fix. Not, oh my God, your mother died. You go to the doctor, you tell your doctor, I think I'm depressed. My mother died 2 weeks ago. And the doctor picks up the pad to give you a prescription. Instead of, you know, give me a second. You know what, Joey, bring up that list of therapists, especially those that deal with grief. You know what? Here's the list. I want you to call one of these individuals. Call me in a few days or a week. Let me know who you chose and go to a support group. Not that you won't need this. You may need it. But, you know, grief is a process, and we all experience it. It's something none of us can get away from. So it's really about being able to look at each other and help each other, but really take into account the whole person. You know, it's like the whole person. You know, all the therapeutic stuff, you're great at what you do. You know, trauma, when you know what happens when you're 7 and the cerebellum and you know, it stays in the brain and the memory and all that stuff. But, you know, how do we teach people? And that's really what we're doing. You know, you and I are sitting in front of people, accepting them, taking them from where they're at, regardless of what their issues are. And doing that coming from the essence of your being, which I already know that you do. I could tell by the first time I heard your voice. That's what sets them on a road. That's what plants a seed for them to heal themselves.
Yes.
And so, you know, with herbalism, I want to educate people so that they can continue to heal themselves, heal their loved ones, you know, obtain knowledge, and also, if the day should come when they need allopathic intervention, that their bodies, because they've used herbs as tonics or to nurture, or, you know, a chronic issue, an acute issue, because herbalism works all across the board for all of those things, but so that their physical body is in a better state to handle the allopathic intervention when they receive it.
Yes.
Because it's about that balance, I think.
Yeah. Wow, you've given us so much amazing information. I just want to comment on my experience too with plants and herbs. Is I really feel like they're a gift from the earth.
They
for
are.
us and for our healing, to feed us and nurture us and help our bodies to heal from the insane reality we live in.
Yes.
Just to share that, you know, you and I had spoken before. I too had Lyme disease for many, many years. Also was in the Northeast for many years growing up. And it was actually, herbs were a big, Western medicine didn't have anything for me really, except antibiotics that were going to destroy all the good things in my body, as well as the
Yes.
Lyme and the co-infections. So herbs played a big role. There were other modalities and stuff, but there were these South American herbs that my naturopath that I was
Great.
working with had knew about, and they had all had crazy names that I couldn't even pronounce. And like one drop, just one drop of
One
the
drop.
of the tincture of this herb would create a massive, you know, die-off reaction. People who have Lyme,
Yeah.
oh, you know, that's good. It doesn't feel good, but it's a
Yeah.
good sign, because it means that the critters are dying off in your body and they're releasing their neurotoxins and as they die. And I mean, and the herbs that I was taking to support my liver in dealing with all of that.
Yes.
And on my nightstand right now, I have ashwagandha and kava kava for
Yeah.
sleep, for help with sleep, and some of the adaptogens that you mentioned. You know, that I have them as part of my supplements as well. And so, as someone who's had firsthand experience, I can say that they can play a huge role in healing and in
Mm.
supporting your body in just whatever it is that it's going through. How important it is to receive from the earth and the gifts of the earth, especially when, and the sources. I'm really glad that you talked about that, because unfortunately, even sometimes with organic food, we know, like I'm in California and I know the wind can carry the pesticides, you
Yes.
know, from the non-organic over to the organic. So really knowing where your stuff is coming from and not just buying it off a supermarket shelf.
Yes.
And working with an expert like yourself, because I do want to highlight to people, there are things that probably are not supposed to be mixed together. If you're on a Western pharmaceutical and then you
Yep.
start taking an herb that's working on the same pathways, that could potentially be risky, right?
Yes, very risky and very harmful. And the thing about plants is that they're bioavailable, which means our body takes them in like food.
Mhm.
So I always tell people all the time, I said, you know, even in terms of supplements, if you have to take them, try to get them so that they're not only that you know where they're sourced, but if they're powdered or capsules, because once you capsule an herb, it starts to disintegrate. The power of the herb starts to disintegrate. So, you know, people keep things on the shelves forever. So all of those things are important. And, you know, back to Lyme, there's four basic protocols. And my guess is you are on one of the heavy duty ones, probably. No, Burner, he uses single herbs. Byron White, I think, protocol. There's 4 protocols: Cowden, Byron White, Balance something, and Bruner. And Bruner basically just uses one herb at a time. But you were on, I'm gonna say, how long did you take it for? 9 months?
Something like that. It was
Yeah.
a while, for
So you were
sure.
probably on the Cowden protocol.
Mhm.
Very potent, literally a drop. And that die-off is massive.
Mhm.
Another tip in reference to that is if you're bitten by a tick, Doxy can be beneficial for some forms or a form of Lyme. But basically, if you're bitten, you need to make sure that you get that antibiotic in your system within 3 days, because after that, guess what? And I think it's only beneficial for Bartonella. So, you know, and then there's Chinese skullcap, which is also very, I took that, I took Japanese knotweed, and then I lived on adaptogens forever, so much so that, that when I went to have an allergy test, the naturopath goes, Dawn, you're coming up with an analogy for mushrooms. I started laughing. I go, no, Jonathan, this is because I was taking mushrooms every day.
Mhm.
So your sourcing is very, very important. And I just tell people, listen, even the stuff that I tell you, you don't believe me, go look it up. Go look it up. Go look it up. I want you to look it up. I want you to become responsible for taking care of yourself, because then you become empowered.
Mhm.
And then and then you start to learn how to become a critical thinker and question,
Yes.
question things.
Mhm.
So many of us, Adriana, are just so afraid to even question our doctor.
Yeah.
You
Agreed.
know, I know
And
somebody
yeah, go ahead.
who's been on high blood pressure medication, and it was like, nitric oxide will really be beneficial. Um, you know, start drinking beet juice. Well, guess what happened?
Mhm. Right.
So they were able to actually reduce that. So I think my message to people is, don't be afraid, ask questions.
Mhm.
You deserve answers. And even if a person doesn't know the answer, that's okay. Hopefully your physician or healthcare provider can actually look at you and say, you know what? I don't know. And not just focus on treating the symptom, but the root cause.
Yes.
And that's what naturopaths attempt to do. That's what herbalists attempt to do. Well, okay, well, what's, like, is this chronic? Is it acute? No, well, it's chronic. I've been having this issue for 5 years. Well, okay, so, when did it start? What was happening? What's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an important piece of it. So I want people to know how special they are, and that the power exists within them to make changes.
Yes.
And to learn and to educate themselves, for the planet, and for their families.
And I think the same is true for us who are like holistic mental health practitioners. We are also interested in the root causes of things, and we are working body, mind, heart, spirit, all of it is interwoven together. And
Yes.
we are looking to empower people. I don't see myself as having the answers. I have questions, I have tools. But ultimately, I believe every person has within themselves what they require to heal. Yeah.
Yes. That's really it. That's really, where they're sitting with them until they're able to see the light within themselves.
Yes.
And that's really it. And it's important for us, because I have to say this before I go, because I have to. Because we're healers, because that's who we are. It's often difficult for us to take time for us, and to take time to be good to ourselves. Because, helpers and healers need to be needed. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So, that's an important piece too. And I'm a work in progress like everybody else, like every other person on the planet. Yeah. I have light, I have shadow. And the biggest lesson I've learned is to be able to not to run from the shadow, but to be able to go, oh, Dawn, this is your shadow side. Okay, so there it is. Yeah. And embrace it. And just acknowledge that it's there. I could talk to you for hours.
I know. Well, I think what you just said is actually a great segue to the very last thing I did want to cover today on the show, which is this wonderful project that you were inspired to create, that I heard about and I also wanted to participate in. this Nurses Project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. What happened was I happened to read so March 2021, I think, yeah, March 2021. The New York Times actually had, in their opinion section, had a video. And in the video, this was a COVID unit. They took the video into the COVID unit with the nurses. And put it this way, 3 to 5 men that I know happened to see the same video and told me that they cried when they watched it. I went to go to sleep that night. I'm tossing and turning. The next day, I'm tossing and turning and tossing and turning. And I was always told that when something is brought to you and it leaves you with a restless spirit, it means you need to attempt to do your best to do something about it. So I had this brilliant idea. I said, wow, these nurses, they're those that have children are trying to educate their kids at home, because then everybody was homeschooling and all of that. And they're burnt out, and they're not only taking care of patients, they're actually sitting with patients who are dying on a computer with their families, because their families couldn't come and even see them, even to say goodbye, those that were transitioning. And so the toll, the amount of trauma and level of intensity that nurses all over the world have been going through. So I, sitting here, said, this is not right. Dawn, try to find some clinicians, just totally just see if you can find some clinicians who'd be willing to offer 5 3 individual sessions or group sessions to any nurse who has really experienced, either PTSD or anxiety or not wanting to go to work, and a host of other issues based on being exposed to this kind of heavy duty, capital T trauma, day in and day out, going home, doing a 12-hour shift, sleeping for 4 hours, because some of them were doing that, and then returning. And so, we tried getting that out to hospitals. Of course, hospitals are now huge corporations now, not like back in the day. Even speaking to nurses privately that said, Dawn, it's a wonderful idea. Many of us are leaving the profession in droves, to try to get the word out to any nurse who would like to receive this at no cost to them. So the website is still up, nursingproject.org. So if there is a nurse out there who is still interested, the person that they would call is me. And so, we would talk directly, and then I would match them up with a clinician, or if they're interested in a group, because you also volunteered to do a wonderful, 6-week program that includes all the kind of stuff we were talking about. Mindfulness, EFT, all of it, to be of assistance to them. So we had a PA person, and that was somewhat helpful, but it's still really hard and very difficult, to really get the word out. And people are fearful and apprehensive because they don't want people necessarily to find out that this whole program is confidential. So the website is still up. So if there are any nurses anywhere that are interested, go to nursingproject.org and you'll see the phone number and give me a call.
Wonderful. What a gift. What a gift you have been, not just through the Nursing Project, but with everything that you're doing and with all that you've shared with us today. If people want to find out more about your work, how can they get a hold of you?
I'm going to give you the website and my email. You ready? Okay, that's alter-nativehealing.com. And my email is info@alter-nativehealing.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that's in the show notes so everybody knows where they can go to get more
All right.
information.
Listen, someday I'm going to get to see you in person and give you a big one of these.
Yes, I'd love that.
All right,
Thank
sweetheart.
you so much, Dawn, for being
Thank
with
you.
us today.
All
And
right, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
yes, and thank you all for who tuned in today. If you like this podcast, if you found it useful, please do share, click like, comment, rate it, because the more people we get interacting with the podcast, the more it goes out in the world and more people can find it. So please do help support us with that. Thanks again to Dawn. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and we'll see you next time on Kaleidoscope.
All right, sweetheart. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.